Welcome to Pop Culture Retro, which was recently voted the 15th best podcast by the residents of the Golden Years retirement community in Boca Raton, Florida. Each show, we'll revisit some of your favorite pop culture memories with insider and outsider perspectives. Now, please help me welcome your hosts, Ike Eisenmann and Jonathan Rosen.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Pop Culture Retro. I'm one of your hosts, Jonathan Rosen, along with Ike Eisenmann, and today we are thrilled to welcome someone who I'm a huge fan of, who's a platinum recording artist, a writer, director, producer, and also starred in several beloved classics such as Dallas and A Chorus Line, and I also believe a fellow Floridian, if I'm right. Please help us welcome Audrey Landers. Audrey, thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, it's wonderful to be here.
Where in Florida are you?
I am in Sarasota, Florida.
Oh, beautiful. Love it there.
Yeah. How about you?
I'm in South Florida, but near Boca Raton, near that area.
Very nice.
Yeah, and I'm outside of Orlando, so here we all are in the same state.
Oh my goodness! Yep, I see your Walt Disney stuff. I would have done this in my other office with all my gold records, but I'm doing some construction there, so I could put up the virtual screen behind me, but this is pretty enough.
That's fine. Well, to start with, you grew up in Philadelphia and started acting at a young age. Did your family have a love of performing arts which influenced you, or was it something that you took an interest to on your own?
Well, actually, I didn't spend a lot of time in Philadelphia. I left when I was, my mom moved us when we were very young to New York State.
Okay.
And, yeah, I always knew that's what I wanted to do. It was in my blood. And I started school plays and local theater. And then finally I got, I auditioned for everything I could that was a local production. And then I, through my singing, which was incredible that this occurred, I was invited to do the Merv Griffin show. And I sang a song that I had written, and I was very young, and I got an agent.
Oh my.
She signed me then and there, and then I got one soap opera after another. And in each of those soaps, as a kid and as a teenager, young teenager, and then later on in my teens, all through my teens, I did soaps. I played a singer, and I had the opportunity to write my own songs. So that's what really fostered my writing skills, to have to write on demand. I'd open the script and say, oh, Heather sings and plays guitar. I went, okay, I better learn how to play the guitar, and that sort of thing. And that's how my songwriting, I really honed my songwriting skills there until I got Dallas, in which I also had the opportunity to stay.
We're going to ask about Dallas, of course, yes.
Oh yeah, we're going to ask about everything. So,
Okay.
but going back to the song you mentioned on the Merv Griffin show, is that the one you recorded when you were like just a kid?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So that's how people found out about it, because you performed it on his show?
Well, I don't know if it got any notoriety, but it got me notoriety in the sense that I was young and I didn't have an agent, and I had been wanting to be in the business. I'd been acting in non-professional productions since I was, 9, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So by the time I was 12, 13, 14, then, I was able to audition for soaps and commercials and things like that.
Mm.
So the soaps came about because of Merv Griffin? That's how you got it? Or?
Yeah.
Wow.
Because I didn't have an agent before that.
So they just offered it? They just like offered it to you?
What? No. But
Okay.
the agent, she was in the audience and she said, you should be represented. And she sent me out on auditions.
Wow.
And, otherwise I wouldn't have had the opportunity to audition until I had an agent.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, definitely. I mean, I certainly know how that's how the business works. But so, okay, so what was it like for you at the time? You were performing regionally and then to suddenly be appearing on, a nationally viewed show.
It's funny. It's kind of the way my whole life has been. I never look at it from the outside, like, oh, what is it like doing this, that, or the other. I'm so immersed in my work that it was just what I was doing. It didn't impact me personally in that I didn't look at it and say, oh, wow, look where I'm at. I just went, oh my goodness, I have this great opportunity. I have to work harder. I have to focus. And that's kind of how I have approached everything that I do.
And so you went later on to Juilliard. So you had studied music. So is that the path that you originally wanted to take instead of acting at that time? You were more interested in music? No?
No, I wanted to do both.
Okay.
They were both my true loves and my passions. And I feel very fortunate that I was able to forge that path, that parallel path, both singing and acting. I think it's really unusual for a performer to have that opportunity. And yet, as I said, it followed me through both of the soap operas. I started out as a young teen on The Secret Storm, and that's where I started my writing, my songwriting. And then Somerset, which I played, all through my teens and for the beginning of college, and then Dallas. And Dallas is really when my recording career took off. Like earlier on, I had the opportunity to record a country song in Nashville with the legendary Buddy Killen. And we recorded in Nashville and in Muscle Shoals. And the song did get attention, and it was quickly pulled because they thought it was a little too controversial for a teenager, a young teen, to be singing. And so my US recording career never took off. It really didn't. My acting took off, and then the singing on the shows took off, but I never really had much opportunity to release records in the US. But then on Dallas, a European record producer who was very successful, who happened to live in LA part-time and was a fan of Dallas, approached my mom, who was my manager, and said, well, does she really sing? And she said, well, yeah, come on down. We're having our dress rehearsal for her Vegas act. So you're invited to the dress rehearsal. And he came, and he, was impressed. And then we signed the European deal, which was kind of how all those hit records came to be, through Germany first and then throughout Europe.
Well, backing up a little bit, after Juilliard, you moved out to LA. So was that nerve-wracking at all to pick up, to another state and try to make it there?
Well, no one's ever asked me that. I had gone out for a summer here and there when I was younger, and I had done lots of wonderful episodics in LA. And then I came home and I said to my mom, I want to start college. And so she arranged for me to audition for a soap. And so I was able to go to college and do a soap, which was challenging, but incredible. And so when I went to LA, it was kind of like starting all over again. Here I had been, on TVs for, my whole life, basically. And in LA, there was not a lot of credibility given to a soap actor. They didn't, now it's different, okay? But then it was, okay, you did commercials and you did 8 years of a soap opera or something, but I had to start auditioning all over again. And I did, and I did several pilots that didn't get picked up. And then finally I was the lucky winner in Dallas.
Well,
Well,
how sorry,
yeah,
go ahead, John.
Sorry.
Hey.
No, I was just saying you're starting over in LA. How long did it take you to get an agent there, or was that?
Oops, I'm so sorry. Let me just answer. I'm so sorry. That shouldn't have happened.
Well, it was an enjoyable ringtone anyway. No, just wondering, now that you moved to LA, obviously you started going out on auditions, but how long did it take you to secure an agent there, given the soap opera stigma?
I did not have a hard time getting an agent at all because I had
Yeah.
had an agent when I was doing the episodics earlier on. I had a kids agent then, and that was before I had moved there full time. I had spent a summer there, so I had a wonderful agent then. Her name was Iris Burton. She was kind of notorious. I didn't know it at the time, and and then when I came back, I had a good agent.
Mm-hmm.
I had a very good agent. I was with ICM, so that's who got me my audition for Dallas.
Well, your first credit I was looking at, it was on Room 222. The show with Among the Stars was Lloyd Haynes, Karen Valentine, and you also appeared in huge hit shows like Emergency and Happy Days. So you'd already been a regular on soaps now, but is there like a new sense of like achievement that you're now like in these hugely popular primetime shows? Like, did you ever look around and think like, am I really here?
My sense of achievement was really, I felt very, very proud of my soap opera days. Okay. I mean, I was on the cover of every daytime magazine. We had incredibly interesting and thought-provoking storylines on these soaps. And so I was very proud of that time and my work there. And doing all these wonderful episodics was just a blast. I mean, a Happy Days, or, as you said, Room 222, that was a long time ago. And so I really enjoyed them. I didn't say, oh my God, now I'm in the big leagues. I didn't really think that at all, because I always felt so proud of my work on daytime television as well.
Well, you should, yeah. Now, one credit of yours that really stuck out to me was well before Riverdale became a hit show. Now, you played Betty Cooper on an iteration of Archie. So, and it's available on YouTube. I watched it, and I had never seen it this week. Yes, it's on YouTube.
Can you send me the link?
I will send you the link. Yes, absolutely. I was fascinated watching it. I was like enjoying it. So, was that a pilot for a potential series or like a one-off special? What do you remember about that?
Well, we actually did two of them, and I don't know which one you saw. One of them was a musical.
It was the musical. Yes, she was singing in it.
The musical? There was one prior to that, which was for ABC also. And so perhaps the musical was the spinoff of the first, what was it called? The Archie comedy variety. And it was a bunch of sketches, and I played there. And so I'd love to see the musical. I don't have a copy of that one.
I will forward that to you.
Thank you. No, that was really fun. And that was a big deal. That was very early on in my career. And it was so much fun playing a cartoon character that I loved.
Was that intended to be a series?
I think it might have been, but it never took off.
Well, you also guest starred multiple times on two of the biggest shows of the era, Fantasy Island and Love Boat. And I had a wonderful opportunity to guest star on Fantasy Island, but I never got to guest star on Love Boat, which was very disappointing to me. So what were some of your memories of working on those shows, and how much fun was that?
Okay, it was Fantasy Island was really fun because, at the time, I did a Fantasy Island before I even got Dallas. I did my first Fantasy Island, which was unheard of. I wasn't on a network show yet, and yet I was so lucky to have gotten that. And I played a country singer on it. But several fantasy islands that I did, I loved because you could play outrageously different characters that you were doing on your regular series. And one of my favorites, of course, was when I played an 83-year-old woman whose fantasy it was to go back to her days as a Ziegfeld girl. And so I got to play the woman, the 83-year-old woman, and then the fantasy of her youth as a Ziegfeld girl. So that was just a wonderful experience, just to play those kinds of roles. So Fantasy Island was very special in that regard. On Love Boats, you also got to play great characters. And recently somebody sent me a link to the 2-hour Love Boat special that we did, where we went through the whole Mediterranean and through in Europe, in where else did we go? We did the whole Mediterranean. Then we went to Portugal and Spain and ended up in Germany filming, and the south of France. So it was just really fun. In that, my favorite scene, I get a pie in the face. So, so I watch that over and over, and I go, darn, my hat got in the way. It just was so epic the way that pie just slid down my hat. Darn, it didn't hit me in the face. It hit my gorgeous hat. But it was a one-take deal. And they liked it, so we kept it.
When you were on these shows, was the cast very welcoming in all these shows that you were on?
Oh, yes, because, especially on those shows, they were all about the guest cast.
Mm-hmm.
Had your core, Ricardo Montalban, amazing. And so you had this core of, the regulars, but every show was made up of all your guests. So yes, very welcoming, and they were wonderful, fun shows to do.
So how did you be on Dallas after all the guests? How did you come to Dallas?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that.
How did you come to Dallas? How did you wind up landing the role in Dallas after this?
Oh, well, as I said, I was in LA, and I had done several, I'd been auditioning a ton, lots of pilots that did not get picked up. Goober's Girls, Waverly Wonders, the short-lived High Cliff Manor, Boomtown.
That's on YouTube as well, by the way. High Cliff Manor is on YouTube as also.
It is?
Yes.
Oh my goodness, where have I been? I've been writing, I'm very immersed in my writing. So anyway, so I had the opportunity to audition with, every beautiful, talented Hollywood girl, young woman, starlet, whatever. I mean, everybody was vying for a role in Dallas. It was a hit already. I think it'd been on the air maybe 2 years already. And so, and the character was only supposed to be like a 2-arc episode.
Oh, really?
Yeah, 2-episode arc. And I guess it clicked. Afton clicked, and the music was not originally part of the show. During filming one day early on, that was an intimidating cast to join. Okay, I have to admit, they were a very tight-knit, close family. And not only was I new, my character was an outsider. And so although they were very welcoming, it was an intimidating spot to be thrown into like that, especially my very first episode.
Of course.
Was a scene in bed with JR. Come out at 7 a.m., you're on the set. Hello, everybody, this is Larry Hagman, this is the crew, now get into bed, It was like,
oh, wow.
And, it's TV bed, you're wearing this. So just your shoulders are bare, and he's under the covers in his jeans and his cowboy boots, but shirtless. And there's the scene begins with him kind of just like rolling off And so we're both lying face up. And so the prankster that he was, he reaches over, there's an ice bucket next to us with champagne, and the director, Leonard Katzman, says action, and Larry leans over and immediately puts ice down my back. And we have action, and I'm going, no, I am a consummate professional, and I am trained never to stop a scene until the director yells cut. And so I am doing my very best to carry on with the scene with freezing cold ice just melting down my back. And of course, the whole crew and cast was, and director was in on it as well. And so finally, they're all chuckling behind the camera, and finally, Lenny yells cut. And I went, oh, thank goodness. And he said, well, welcome. This is how we break the ice. So,
Oh.
so it was very, it was fun. It was
like you just said, the show was already huge, and you came season after the Who Shot JR episode, if I believe, right? And so you'd been in a lot of popular shows already, but now you have a main role in one of the biggest series of television there. So does your life change at all? I'm like always curious about that.
It did. It really did. I think that as wonderful as my prior experiences were, Dallas was suddenly a hit in 110 countries around the world, okay? And so all of a sudden, it opened the whole world to me. The music was really, really important in my career. And I started to mention how that happened, but I'll get back to that. But because of Dallas's popularity overseas, my recording career just took off. Oh. And my records were so popular. And I think Dallas certainly had a lot to do with it, because people knew who I was, in all over Europe. So when they heard my music, it was that much more of an impact. Yeah, so that it did change in that sense. And I had, because of Dallas, I had concerts all over the world. Not directly because of Dallas, but because my music, as an offshoot and again a parallel track with Dallas, I did concerts all over the world, and I had, as you mentioned earlier, platinum, multi-platinum, and gold records, and I got to write most of them. And so it was a very exciting time.
Wow.
And
well,
crazy work.
Yeah, no. I'm sorry to be to interrupt you, but I mean, what an incredible opportunity. And you were working with big names, and you already mentioned Larry Hagman, and there was also Barbara Bel Geddes. What was she like to work with, and what was Larry like to work with in general?
Oh, look, he was fun-loving, and he was professional at all times, and I think he was pretty much the backbone of the show. He was the leader, but of course, Patrick is wonderful. Linda is wonderful. I mean, we just had it was a really, it was a great experience. And they, as I mentioned, are a family and were a family. And sometimes I would feel that life imitates art or vice versa. I was the outsider. My character was a hussy. And I sometimes felt a little bit like an outsider. But I don't know if it was due to them or due to me. As I said, I'm very, I'm not a big jokester on the set. I really take my time on the set very seriously. So, maybe it's partly my fault too. I wasn't, I didn't initiate pranks. It wasn't my thing,
Looking back at it now, what are some of your memories from being on that show?
Wow. Look, I loved our time on location. We filmed in Dallas for several months out of every year, so that was wonderful. I loved I loved being around the cast, the production crew. Everybody was really, really harmonious, wonderful, supportive. And then when I started doing all this recording, I, it was in the midst of my run on Dallas, and I had to support my albums. And I was filming much of the time, most of the time in LA. And my concerts were in Paris or Frankfurt or, I have to go to Belgium, I mean, the Netherlands. And so quite often I would leave on a Thursday night if I was lucky not to be filming on Friday and fly all night. My mom and I would arrive in, say, Paris or Frankfurt. I'd get off the plane. There was press, there was video, there was, I'd be whisked away to do an afternoon show, then an evening show, then a concert that night. And the same thing would happen for 2, 3 days, as well as photo shoots, everything to support my albums. And then I would fly back to Dallas. So these are my memories of doing Dallas. Arriving and always stressed that my flights would be delayed, and very grateful that the producers were okay with me traveling so far in the midst of filming. So it was pretty hard, and I did that for like 2 years, every few weeks. So it was quite a schedule just to support my albums. And then of course I got the opportunity to do a chorus line.
Oh, we're going to ask you about that for sure. Yes.
And that was during my Dallas days. The storyline, my character it was an opportune time for them to make my character disappear temporarily. I didn't know if it was permanently, but they were okay with me leaving to do a chorus line. And then, I was just so fortunate that they'd invited me back years later. So, as I said, the show was a wonderful, wonderful part of my life.
Well, I mean, was your busy music career what kind of prompted you to decide to leave Dallas?
I didn't really decide to leave Dallas. I had the opportunity to do a chorus line in the movie.
Oh, okay.
And the character had already kind of, we were discussing the future of the character and where the character was headed. And it all just was an opportune time when chorus line came for the character to take a break.
Okay.
Well, I do have to ask about one thing. Okay, while you were still in Dallas, you appeared on a couple of times on a show that was religious viewing in my house, Battle of the Network Stars. and you did well, and your team wound up winning once. So we've had on other people who appeared on that, and they all basically said the same thing, that it was all joking around till the competition started, and then everyone got really serious. So what was your experience?
Oh yeah, the competition was real. And it's hard to be competitive when the cameras are on and you still have to try to look pretty, I mean, you can't just get down and dirty. It was a balance, because it was a show, so you had to make sure it was showy, a lot like the reality shows of today.
Sure.
Well, I mean, given your hugely successful acting career at the time and then your exploding musical career at the same time, comparatively, do you get more satisfaction from singing or acting?
I love acting. what do I get more the singing is a different kind of satisfaction. I think because I get quite often I have the opportunity to write my music. That's another avenue of expression. And the singing, at this moment, I have a little more control over it. I mean, I do concerts. I'm able to do them at kind of on my schedule. When I want to do an appearance, or I recently did a wonderful show at the Sarasota Opera House, which was Great American Songbook, plus a few of my other favorites, through the 50s, 60s music. And I love my music because it's one of the areas that my son Daniel and I work on together and have for many years. And he was kind enough to make an appearance during that show and do some of his music. He's an incredible songwriter and performer and singer and writer, screenwriter. I mean, he's super talented.
We were going to ask about him, but yes, but continue. Yes, you could say.
And he did that show with me, and he started doing. You know, he didn't do the whole show with me. He said, "Okay," I said, "You're going to come to watch me. Could you please do a couple of songs?" And so he did. So I got to change my gown, and then we did some songs together as well. And you know, he had started doing that when he was like 9, coming on tour with me. So he has his own very, very all-encompassing, incredible career, but we do work a lot together, which is a blessing.
That's great. But so now going to the music, I mean, you're used to being on these huge shows. Is there a different set of nerves that come with stage, like with the full orchestra behind you? There intimidation in that?
Is it which part? Which is the huge show?
Getting on stage and singing with, like, you know, you have a full orchestra behind you. You've done things like, you know, is there like some sort of like a different set of nerves than coming on acting and things?
No, it's a really beautiful energy to have all these live musicians and all of their beautiful energy, and then their instruments and the connection with the audience. And it's not, I don't have nerves from the music and from the performing. I really don't. The only thing I ever have nerves about are auditions. Okay, but the performances, I could be in front of 10,000 people and I don't have nerves.
That is funny that you say that, because I always was a nervous wreck at auditions. The second I got the job, I was absolutely fine, because the work was like, I knew the work, you know. But yeah, that's you're the only other performer I've ever heard actually say that. So I appreciate hearing it.
Yeah.
Well, you brought up A Chorus Line, which this was the film adaptation of the massive Broadway hit, which I was very fortunate to see the original cast in New York back in the 70s. So was that just another audition for you, or were you offered the role?
No, it was an audition. And honestly, I had been, my mom and I were in France, and I had a beautiful performance at a place called the Palm Beach Casino, which is, the backdrop is the Mediterranean Sea. So it's like an incredible venue. I had that. Then we flew and had my gold record presentation, and all that goes with that. And then it was kind of like all night. The next day we flew from Paris to New York on the Concorde. And then I was continuing on to LA. And while we were in New York, my mom's office was in New York, I was living in LA. She checked messages. There were no cell phones. And so she checked her messages, and Richard Attenborough, his office had called to see if I was in town in New York to audition for him for A Chorus Line. And I had a 4-hour layover So she said yes. And so I went to the kiosk and bought the cassette of A Chorus Line because I was one of the few people that had not seen it.
Oh, wow.
And learned the song, which was Dance 10 Looks 3, as best as I could in the car, in the limo on the way to Manhattan. And I got there and I read and I sang a little bit and with Sir Richard Attenborough. And he said, I love what you're doing. And these are the 17 finest dancers. And I'd like you to go audition for the choreographer now. And I said, oh, well, thank you so much. But I'm not one of the 17 finest dancers. And, I dance, I have a Vegas act and they lift me up and they twirl me and they make me look good. Okay. But I am not a dancer of that caliber. And he said, well, just go over. So the studio was the rehearsal studio was a few blocks away. And I went up there and there was the line with the space where Val should be. Mm-hmm. And they'd been in rehearsals for 2 months already, and they had not found Val because the idea was not to have anybody famous. I guess Michael Douglas, obviously, but in the chorus line, there should have been nobody who stood out. And for 2 months, Richard Attenborough didn't find the person he wanted. So I was, lucky. Maybe he didn't know who I was. I don't know. But they called me in and he let me audition. And then, as I said, I walk into this dance rehearsal and I went, oh my goodness. And the choreographer said, well, would you please, I said, look, I'm not a dancer. He said, well, how would you interpret this? So I basically interpreted the whole thing, much of the way you see it on the screen today. That was pretty much my interpretation. And I said, okay, thank you very much. And I kind of skulked away thinking, I'd made a total fool of myself. And the rest of the cast, of course, was standing there. They were smoking and watching me. It was very intimidating. Other dancers, and they were so, so talented. And so I left, got in my limo, went back to Kennedy Airport, checked in on the payphone with my mom to say I made my connection. And she said, don't get on the plane. I said, what? She said, you got the part.
Wow.
Get on the plane. And so the next 5 months were spent in New York, and Richard Attenborough introduced me to the cast the next morning, and pulled me aside and said, darling, don't worry, we'll get you a dance double. And I went, what? I said, I am doing the quintessential dance movie. I'm not going to have a dance double. And so he said, okay. And so rehearsals for the dance were from 9 to 5 every day. My rehearsals were 6 a.m. with a private coach to 9 a.m. to 9 with a private coach, 9 to 5 with the cast, and then 6 to 9 p.m. again with a private coach, just to get me up to speed and to see if I could, cut it. And I'm very proud that I did. I did not, however, if you look closely, I did not learn how to tap. And I'm not in that big tap scene that goes on behind the argument between Cassie and Zach. I'm not in that.
I'll have to check that.
So I never learned to tap.
What was Attenborough like as a director?
He was kind and wonderful, and he really cared about each person's feelings, and he was just a really wonderful director to work with.
And how was Michael Douglas to work with?
He was great. he was, he was so professional, obviously, and had a great sense of humor. And, our scenes together and his work obviously went like that. That was a cinch. It was great.
Going back to Dallas for a moment, you reprised your role when they did the reboot in 2013. What was it like for you to go back and revisit your role? It was like surreal a little bit.
Once I got to South Fork, it was kind of like, oh, I belong here. I remember this feeling. It's like putting on a pair of really comfortable shoes, and seeing the cast was really great. I loved the way, my character was portrayed in the reboot. I really enjoyed her. I loved that Afton had grown so much and was self-confident. And I love the fact that my daughter was marrying JR's son. I thought that was very clever. I only wish they had done more with that storyline, but I thought it was really wonderful to be a part of it.
Mm. So then you created the kids' TV series, the Huggabug Club, along with your mom and sister. What was the impetus for that show?
Okay, well, actually, my sister's girls, who are older than my children, were watching a lot of TV as kids do. And as a caregiver, babysitter, I would go out of my mind watching those shows with them. And I said, we can write something better than that. I mean, let's take the elements of the best out there and I did a ton of research, and I discovered what colors children relate to, the methods that kids learn best when learning through music, what rhythms they respond to. It was very scientific for me, just that portion of it, to choose the colors, to choose the shapes. I drew every character in the show. And I drew with the proportions that were most appealing to children. And then the music, I basically co-wrote 250 original songs in the series. And it was a musical. It is a musical educational series for kids baby age 2 to 6. And I'm very proud of it. We did 47 half hours, and it has become a learning tool for lots of preschools and for children with disabilities. And to this day, I get beautiful letters from parents and saying how much their children love it and how much they've learned from it. It's just, it was truly rewarding.
How intense was that for you? I mean, to create 250 songs and be behind the show, like, creating the whole show as well.
It was a challenge. It was a labor of love. My children were toddlers at the time. I edited the whole series myself. I mean, I did the offline editing. Editing was very different in those days. I literally had to write, down to the 10th of a second, which cuts they were to use from massive amounts of videos for every episode. It was kind of groundbreaking in that we used 3 cameras, and then often more than that. I insisted on having a crane so that we could shoot the dances more MTV style for toddlers back in the late 90s, different than what kids watch today. But it was certainly more fast-paced than a Mr. Rogers or a Barney. It had the educational value of Sesame Street and the singability and the appeal to the adults. The music, I thought, I was very proud of the music because adults could listen to it and enjoy it. It wasn't difficult. It was fun for parents to listen to, you know, like a rock and roll thing for, you know, what to do in case of a fire, stop, drop, and roll, you know, a very rock and roll type version. And our characters each had their own personalities. And yeah, the Huggabug Club was really a true labor of love and a rewarding experience.
Mm. And you starred along with your sister, Judy Landers, and you got your mother who's producing the show. What's it like working with your family in a professional setting?
Well, in those days, it was wonderful. My mom produced the show and donated it to PBS because she really felt that kids should have the opportunity to see it. And when it wasn't picked up and paid for, she donated it. So that was a pretty generous and incredible thing that she did. You know, I have worked with my mom for a long time. We have obviously the Huggabug Club, and we've co-produced films together and pilots together. And she and I had a fashion collection for many years. We had that was on QVC UK and Home Shopping Europe, and for what was it here in the US? I forgot the name of the network, but it was on it was here in the US too, on one of the shopping networks. And so we loved doing that. We designed things, and we had our design studio in Manhattan, in New York, and it was a lovely experience. We enjoyed working together.
That's great. Now, through the years, you've
and we fought a lot. But we got through it.
So through the years, you've worked with some of the greats in the business, like one of my favorites, Bob Hope, among many others. So what are some of your favorite memories of working with some of these show business legends?
Oh, I did a great duet with Tom Jones, which I loved. He had a variety show way back in the day, and I think he was filming in Canada. And I was a guest on the show. We did a duet together, reunited, and that was really fun. It was so early in my career, my adult career. And so it was such a thrill to be doing a duet with Tom Jones. And it was fun getting to, you know, my mom and I sat down to dinner with him and his son, who he was working with at the time. And it was great. Bob Hope was quite a character to work with. We would often take a private plane, never his, as he would always point out, because he said, why should I own one if I can always borrow a friend's? And we'd get on the plane, and my mom would bring her little Bichon, and he would bring his little poodle, and we'd take a short flight somewhere, maybe Northern California, and hop off the plane, do a live show, and then fly back to LA. It was a great experience. He was always trying out his jokes, testing them on us. And if something didn't get the laugh he expected during the performance, we'd sit on the plane on the way back, and he would tell that joke until we gave him a boisterous enough laugh. And I learned very quickly that he's doing that joke again. Okay, haha, no, ha ha, you know. So, again, it was fun.
Well, speaking of legendary, you were also on some of the most famous game shows like Match Game and Hollywood Squares. And what were those experiences like? Because Match Game, just in particular, seemed like it was such a fun place to be around.
Match Game was fun. Okay, Match Game was mindless. It was fun. It was goofy. The Pyramid, on the other hand, was, I did many episodes of the first, it was $10,000, then it was $100,000 pyramid. The stakes were high. I always was very competitive and always wanted to win. And I won a lot for charities and for contestants.
Mm.
And so doing that show was, I always get nervous on these where I have, like Match Game, you didn't get nervous, or Hollywood Squares was, you didn't get nervous on. But these shows where people counted on you to win for them, whew, that was tough. Password, and The Pyramid, they were both very, they were lots of fun, but I was competitive and definitely nervous, but it never showed. And Password, I had a very strange experience, or Password Plus. There was one contestant who was on the show who was very, I don't know, we just had this strange, it was like we were reading each other's minds, okay? And I was winning him a lot of money. And he said, I can't remember, but he said off camera that he couldn't say his real career on camera because it was like government or something like that, whatever it was, he couldn't really say. So he had a different story that he told on air. But behind, you know, during commercial breaks, he said, yeah, that's not my real career, whatever. But I said, wow, you know, like, what are you, a mind reader or whatever, you know? And like, for example, I would say color and he would say gray. Okay, nobody does that. Okay, and it was the right answer. So the next thing that happens is we win a lot of money for him. And that's that. Then I find that he's on FBI's most wanted list as a con artist. And then they have to lure him into the studios to pick up his prize money, and he gets arrested. But so, and I find this out because, you know, in the 11 o'clock news, it was probably a big deal. And so I'm watching the news one day and they have a picture of me jumping up and down. Yay! God, what the heck is that? Why do they have that on there? And it's because that was the story. So it was a very, it was weird.
Oh, great story. My gosh.
It was a crazy experience.
Well, that's fantastic. Now, you mentioned your son is in the business. So is there something that you're looking forward to collaborating together?
We are working on such wonderful, exciting projects together. We have a dark pop musical film for which he wrote all of the music and I wrote the screenplay. And we are in early development stages on that. And we have an irreverent crime comedy.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Series, which Daniel has written at least the first 2 seasons of episodes and more. And we have we have a limited series in the works. Oh, we have a lot of good things. We have a sci-fi project that's in earlier stages of but I love sci-fi. So we have a mid-apocalyptic sci-fi series. So we have a lot of stuff we work on together. My brain and his kind of go in every direction. We kind of take in a little here, and here. And we're just so lucky that we have an outlet for all that because we have a diverse roster of projects on our plate.
Wow. Well, Dallas is celebrating its 45th anniversary. Is there anything special being done for it?
Yes, you missed it. Missed it. Okay. Last month, for the 45th anniversary, we went to Palm Springs to a venue called Oscars, and we had a live event there. It was it was like a Q&A type of a thing. And as soon as the press got wind of it, all of a sudden, it was supposed to be just like, a wonderful private event, not too private, but not like publicized. But suddenly People Magazine came, and Entertainment Tonight and Access Hollywood and all of the local stations as well covered it. And it was so much fun. It was really fun. Linda Gray, Patrick Duffy, Charlene Tilton, me, Steve Kennelly, and even Joan Van Ark was there, because she was the early part of Dallas. And so we really had a wonderful time, and it was great reconnecting with everyone, and the fans were very appreciative of all of the articles. The only thing I was kind of miffed about, we did a really great interview with People Magazine, and it wasn't video recorded, so I'm going to give them that as an excuse. But we were asked some really interesting questions, and I thought I gave really interesting answers. And when I saw the article online, all of my questions and answers were attributed to different people.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I was the silent, dumb blonde that never opened my mouth. And I was like, should I say something? Or should I chalk it up to the fact that on that tape, he didn't recognize my voice? And I kind of let it go. But I enjoyed the article, and I enjoyed it too.
When we post this, we'll tag People Magazine and yell at them.
No, don't yell at them, because there's no point.
So you mentioned what you're working on next. So do you have anything coming out like in the near future?
Let's see. Do I have anything actually coming out on screen? No, I have some live performances that we're going to be doing back in Palm Springs music. My son and I are developing another live show. This one that we will actually do together, and we're hoping to document it as well. Maybe it'll be kind of a reality thing as we do our live performances. But that's kind of in the works, along with all of our scripted projects.
Now, do you do any of the fan conventions at all?
I haven't in a few years. I did one like pre-COVID, and that was kind of the last one I did. But now I guess I could get back into it.
I'm sure the fans would love that. Now, and speaking of fans, how can they follow you on social media? Where should they follow you?
Instagram, which is Audrey Landers Official. I'm on Facebook as well. I don't do much on Twitter. I just joined Thread. But that's pretty much, yeah.
And your website, you have your website as well.
I do. My website, darn, I have to update it. I did it at a time, but they didn't make it easy to update it. So I think I'm going to have to take it down and start all over.
Well, we'll post the links to everything. Audrey, thanks so much for joining us today. It's such a treat to get to talk to you. Such a pleasure. We were looking forward to this, and you're welcome back anytime. And I will send you the links when we post this as well. So
that would be wonderful. And I'll share it. Okay.
Well, this has been Pop Culture Retro. I'm Jonathan Rosen, along with Ike Eisenmann. And again, a very special thanks to Audrey Landers. And please subscribe.
Thank you for listening to Pop Culture Retro, where no one was hurt during the making of this podcast.